It is no joke when I say we are now days away from the arrival of players like Russell Wilson, Justin Simmons, and many other of your favorite Denver Broncos as Phase 1 of the team's organized team activities are set to begin. We'll take a look at where this roster stands currently, which players benefited most in the absence of a big move, and look ahead to the NFL Draft now that we have officially entered the month of April. Welcome in to Broncos Weekend, everybody. I'm Matt Boyer, alongside the Hall of Famer, fresh from a visit to our fans in Mexico, Mr. Steve Atwater. Steve, how was the trip?
Oh, it was a great trip. Man, we have some amazing fans in Mexico. The energy level was high. They're excited for this partnership, and I'm excited to see where it's going to go as well.
Steve, a lot of excitement back here locally as we move closer to OTAs starting on April the 11th. The team can only do strength and conditioning workouts as well as meet. So the on-field stuff, we'll get to that. But I want to start with the quarterback before we get to the roster. Obviously, a lot of this excitement is because of Russell Wilson. What do you think the points of emphasis will be for Wilson here this first week when he gets back in the building?
Yeah, well, first off the bat, they're going to try to do all the installation and make sure everybody's on the same page. The focus at the start won't be so much on the intensity and how fast you're doing it. It'll be more on where you have to be, the whys of why you got to be in a certain position and where you got to be. And later on will come the intensity and the speed once training camp gets in and once everything is installed.
Speaking of Wilson, let's take a look at the offensive depth chart, the unofficial offense here as we head into OTAs. Not many surprises here, Steve. Alberto starting at tight end. The wideouts, we know they were already going to be in place heading into OTAs. Javonte Williams, the lead back. And then at right tackle, Billy Turner penciled in. He'll probably have a bit of a position battle with him at right tackle. But where did the Broncos bolster themselves the most here on offense before OTAs?
In addition to the quarterback?
In addition to the quarterback.
Okay, I'm about to say obviously the quarterback.
Well, free agency, so that was a trade.
Okay, all right, my bad. Okay, all right. Well, I would say offensive line. They've added some pieces to the offensive line. Tom Compton, really good offensive line. They had his best year, 2021. And then Billy Turner coming up over from the Green Bay Packers. He's had a history with Coach Hackett, very familiar with the offensive scheme that we're going to run. So I'm looking forward to it being a lot of really good competition along that offensive line. Of course, Calvin Anderson back. So we don't know where these guys are going to end up, but I know that the best 5 offensive linemen will be playing come the start of the season.
Very impressed with the flexibility that guys like Anderson and Turner and Compton all provide. So a lot of competition here right along that offensive line. Where do you think the positions are that the Broncos still need to address? They could add them in free agency, still open here, or they could add them in the draft. Where do you think the Broncos will look to here at the end of April?
Well, I think tight end is a position that still could use a couple of players, or a player or two. I would say that will probably be addressed in the draft. We did address it through free agency, but I think we'll still add another guy in the draft. And then the running back position. Now, Melvin Gordon is signed back, we'll be fine. But if he's not signed back, I think there'll be a position that we'll add to as well, just to get a little bit more depth, especially going into training camp.
Yeah, for me it was running back. Javonte Williams is incredible. We haven't seen that many broken tackles here in a long time.
Right.
But when you break that many tackles, it takes a toll on your body. And so to give him kind of a rest, somebody to spell him, a veteran possibly, I wouldn't mind. But Williams is so savvy and so intelligent that he's almost a veteran in my mind when it comes to his comprehension of the offense. I think that if you bring in a rookie, he would be fine. I want to get to one guy real quick. Some of the loudest moves, Steve, are the ones that you don't make. And the Broncos, as you mentioned, did not bring in a veteran tight end, a pass-catching tight end. Eric Tomlinson, an in-line tight end, was a good move by George Paton to give that Broncos offensive line some additional blocking. But Alberto, Steve, Alberto and Andrew Beck, Alberto, your guy. I know you've been a big fan of his skill set here. How impressed were you that the Broncos said, okay, we feel pretty good about where Alberto is and we want to see what he can do?
Oh, I love that because I think the sky's the limit for him. And the way Coach Hackett spoke about the fullback position, I think Andrew Beck, he should be happy as well because he's going to have plenty of opportunities to show his skill set. So I think that entire tight ends room is going to be happy, and we know that Russell Wilson is going to do a good job of getting them the ball when they're open.
Alberto's never had a 100-yard game in his career. He's had a career high of 5 catches in a game, but we see the flashes, right, Steve? And the touchdown catch in the back of the end zone in 2020, the stretch last year, 2 stretches, as a matter of fact, against the Giants and the Lions. We've seen the flashes, but if he can put it together, a lot of, he's had to play behind Noah Fant, and I think that has had to do with some of those low numbers, but as you mentioned, the sky's the limit for that guy.
Yeah, I think the sky's the limit for him. I know he had a couple of drops last year, but he was also coming off a knee injury. So I think with him having a full off season of being healthy, I was impressed that he made it through last season healthy. I'm really bullish on Albert Okwuegbunam.
Andrew Beck, you look at what the 49ers, Coach Butch Berry, the offensive line coach now for the Broncos, coming over from San Francisco, could maybe look at Beck and say, hey, we can utilize this guy in the blocking game like Kyle Juszczyk up in San Francisco. Oh. Beck has to be happy.
Oh, yeah, and Beck is a tough guy. I love his game. He's physical. He's not going to go in there and kind of turn his shoulder. He's going to go right at you and try to take your head off. And as a defensive guy, those are the guys you don't want to play against. So I love that he's on our team, and when we utilize him as a fullback, he's going to do a great job.
We've got to take a quick break, but when we come back on Broncos Weekend, Randy Gregory and DJ Jones headlined a big free agent class on the defensive side up front. But who does Steve Atwater have his eye on in the secondary as a difference maker? Don't go anywhere. Did an already stellar defense get even better this offseason? Steve Atwater is about to tell us. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. Okay, Steve, we're talking defense now. We're going to look at the defensive depth chart. Russell Wilson got most of the headlines, but the biggest additions in free agency came on the defensive side of the ball with Randy Gregory and DJ Jones. Those are the headliners up front. Denver wanted to rush the passer, stop the run. Did they accomplish both in your mind?
I think they did. The last couple of seasons we've had quite a few injuries at the edge rush position. Bradley Chubb is going to have a full off season to be ready to go. He was ready to go at the end of the season. He's ready to go start of this year. Bringing in Randy Gregory is going to help. And then DJ Jones up the middle with San Francisco. You saw his ability to get penetration to the backfield. I think that was one of the missing keys to our defense last year, is us being able to get that push. And it may have been the scheme that we were running, but I just noticed sometimes when it would be passing situations, our guys wasn't getting back there. So, but I saw DJ Jones doing a great job of that. And I think we have guys on the team that can get into that offensive backfield. I think they'll do that with DJ Jones here to kind of lead the way.
I got to imagine some of those Broncos offensive guys glad that pads don't come on with DJ Jones until
that's right.
until later on in the summer when he's disrupting practice. Mike Kliss reported earlier this week Randy Gregory underwent a shoulder operation to clean up some damage Gregory sustained last season. He should be 100%, but is going to spend a lot of the time this offseason rehabbing. Not that big of a deal, right? Because it's pretty much meetings and strength and conditioning anyways in these next couple of phases.
Yeah, and normally a cleanup in the shoulder that can heal pretty quickly, and he can get back to lifting weights within a month and a half or so, and it's still really early in the off season, so I'm not worried about that at all.
I want to get to a couple of the other significant names, Steve, that we saw the Broncos sign on the defensive side. K'Waun Williams and Alex Singleton both could project as starters for this defense. What do you see from them on film? Obviously, the speed from Singleton, and the same thing with Williams. It feels like the Broncos are getting faster on defense.
Yeah, they're definitely getting faster. First off, Singleton, he flies to the ball. Love him as a defensive player. He's always got his headhunter. He's in headhunter mode all the time, just running to the ball, physical. Got a couple of interceptions, run back where he's caught an interception, picked up a fumble, ran in for a touchdown. And then K'Waun Williams, he had a great interception where it may have been a play of the week where he kind of caught the ball off his rear end. I think it was a penalty or something, but it still was a great play. He's a guy who plays to the whistle as well. Not a big guy, but he's fearless. He reminds me a lot of Kareem Jackson just in terms of his ability to bring down the bigger guys and not really hesitate at going in there to make tackles.
Williams has the ability to blitz too. Had a nice sack against the Bengals late in the season, so I think that's going to open up some things for Ejiro Evero to be able to kind of utilize those defensive backs a little bit differently than they have been utilized in years past. I had a chance to chat with George Payton, Steve, in recent weeks, and he emphasized bringing talented young guys back. And the Broncos did that at the linebacker position with Josie Jewell, Jonas Griffith. when you look at this Broncos linebacking staff, obviously that continuity is going to help, but as a defensive guy, continuity in a defense, how important is that year to year when you're thinking about progression and taking that next step?
I definitely think it's important because when you're first starting out, you're really trying to understand how well the person communicates and what position they're going to be in, or they're going to be there early or they're going to be there late. And you learn how to play off of one another. And when you've had that experience with players, it just really helps your level of comfort and knowing where they're going to be and how reliable they are. And so they have that. And now learning a new system, things may change a little bit, but still having played with the guys, I think will be a big help.
We can't do a roster preview with the Hall of Fame without doing some safety talk.
There we go.
Here. Broncos add J.R. Reed at the safety position, but they also have Caden Sterns, Jamar Johnson, P.J. Lockett safety, alongside, of course, Justin Simmons. How do you see that group shaking out? Or does anyone stand out in that group to kind of say, hey, this guy has a real opportunity ahead of him this spring?
Well, I'll tell you what, I would have to give the nod to Caden Sterns just because he had more playing time last year. But I think any of these guys, it's going to be a great competition in training camp and through OTAs. And, man, I think it's right now it could be a toss-up because any one of those guys, if they step up, play well, pick up this defensive system, they could be playing right along with Justin Simmons. And, hey, guess somebody's got to back Justin up, too.
Should be a good spring for position battles. When we come back on Broncos Weekend, we are talking draft and news out of the league meetings. One of our favorites, Ryan Edwards of Broncos Country Tonight, is joining the program next. Welcome back to Broncos Weekend, everybody. Time now to bring in one of our favorites, one half, the better half, if, we're asking the panel here. No offense to Mr. Benjamin Albright. It's Ryan Edwards from KOA and Broncos Country Tonight. Welcome to Broncos Weekend, my friend.
Appreciate you guys having me, man.
Edwards.
Excited to be here. I mean, Ben being on first doesn't hurt my feelings at all.
Okay. Yeah. Fair enough. Now, biggest takeaways from the league meetings this week. Obviously, that was the big story, hearing from George Paton and Nathaniel Hackett. What was your biggest takeaways from hearing those guys in Florida at the Breakers?
Nathaniel Hackett, again, his energy is always fun. I really like what he talked about the AFC West and about making your team a stronger team throughout. You see what happened last year with the Tennessee Titans, right? They play in the AFC South, and some of those teams are a little bit of a mixed bag. I'm not going to say they're bad, but, not great, not elite, right? But you're playing in the AFC West, and this is expected, at least on paper, to be one of the best divisions, and that's going to make you tested all the way up into the playoffs. If you make it out of the AFC West and you're a playoff team, you are legit, and I think that's going to help the Broncos. I love that part. Talked about Quinn Miners having, the sky's the limit. Talked about him as a right guard, maybe a little bit of a tip ahead on what's going to happen in the offensive line, some of the competitions. But overall, just really great energy. Loved his stuff on fourth downs and how he might need to be held back a little bit on the aggressiveness. I am a big fan of the aggressiveness. I like that. I think that's where the NFL is headed. But I also respect, a little bit of common sense sometimes too.
Now, what did you think about seeing Russell Wilson and the receivers, Garrett Bowles, the tight ends, them out there really getting an early start to getting that chemistry down? I
mean, I think as any Broncos fans get geeked out watching that. Russell Wilson, and like their hype videos, they're designed to be hyped up, right? But I mean, it was a lot of fun to see the receivers out there working with Russ, catching touchdown passes, them being excited. One of his most recent videos, seeing Garrett Bowles out there playing tennis there on his, I mean, it's
pickleball,
just,
right?
Yeah. Sorry, I don't know the difference. But the point being here is that, I mean, it's just fun, right? I mean, this is kind of like, it's not quite what Peyton Manning would do, but Peyton Manning would be organizing these things, right, in the offseason, right? He has this attention to detail. He'd be making sure, like, I'm putting my ownership on this. Chris Collinsworth on his podcast shared a really fun story about having dinner with Nathaniel Hackett, and Nathaniel Hackett showed him his phone. He's like, I got 5 calls in a row from Russell Wilson, because Russell Wilson is just blowing him up constantly. He wants to be involved in what the Broncos are doing. They want to be game planning right now, not missing any moments. And, I mean, like I said, you got to be excited about it.
Yeah. I'm excited about that field that compound that Russell Wilson has down in San Diego. I think all of Broncos country wants to be a part of what's going on there. But
Steve's house like that too.
Yeah, exactly. Steve,
I wish.
Except for the Razorback logo is going to be in the middle instead of the Russell Wilson logo, right?
Are they doing the tourney? I can't remember. Go ahead.
The storylines though that are most compelling. We just talked about Russell Wilson. Obviously, that's going to be the focus, but what else are you looking forward to with phase one? It's only strength and conditioning and meetings, so there's not like a ton that you can really get into, but the excitement level is super high.
Yeah, and that's a good point. With OTAs, we get amped up for it, and then you realize it's practicing in shorts, and there's no pads and no hitting and all that stuff. But I mean, I think what we want to see is the timing of the offense, seeing how those guys are working together on the field. Maybe a little bit of a hint into what the offensive line competitions are going to look like, right? Because we know the interior of the offensive line is going to absolutely have some competition. The right tackle is going to have. I mean, really, Garrett Bowles is the only position that I 100% say is starting. Dalton Reiser's probably close in that 90 percentile, and then everything else, I think.
Javonte?
Well, no, I want to see Javonte. I'm saying for the offensive line. Everything else is competition there along the offensive line. Yeah, I mean, I want to see Javonte, but again, watching running backs in OTAs is one of those like, okay, great, he caught some passes out of the backfield and, against air kind of deal. So as a defensive player, I imagine, against the offense, you're like, okay, just wait till training camp. You feeling good out there right now. Offense, we'll see.
Well, we'll see about that, too, because with Javonte Williams running that ball, not many people want to step in front of him.
Well, no. And, of course, Mike Boone's also a very physical running back. And we don't even know what they're going to do in the draft just yet. So, yeah, I mean, for phase one OTAs, definitely a lot of excitement. But, yeah, you have to also tailor it back just a little bit, knowing it's just running around in shorts. We
talked about positions, the offensive line, right tackle you just mentioned. There's going to be a lot of eyes on that. But positions of need, what else does this team need right now position-wise?
Well, tight end. I think they need to have more options in the tight end room. Albert Okwuegbunam is super talented, speedy tight end, good blocker. I think he's an all-around guy. But you brought in Eric Tomlinson, who's more of a blocking tight end, and outside of that, there's not a lot of options there for the Broncos if they have injuries or performance or anything like that. So I'd say right now that's one of the top things. I think a long-term plan at right tackle, whether that's something you decide to do in the draft or you continue to look at your options. They brought in a lot of competition, which is a good thing, but you need to look at long-term option there. I'm bullish on Caden Sterns at safety. I think that he deserves to be the starter this year, but I feel like the depth behind, you have Johnson there who could be good, but we didn't get to see very much of him last year. So I want to see a little bit more added to the safety room. And then I guess you could probably add another edge. I mean, at this point, you really go wrong with too many edge rushers. You already got the shoulder thing there with Randy Gregory. Bradley Chubb has been working his way back from injury. We know what the room looks like behind him, so I'd like to see another edge added.
I got a question on that. You mentioned tight end, and Noah Fant was obviously involved in the trade. What kind of traits would you like to see in the next tight end? Because I think Albert Okwuegbunam has most of those traits. But what would you like to see in another tight end?
I mean, honestly, a lot of that, right? I mean, we'll probably talk about it a little bit, but a guy like Trey McBride, right? He's a 4.5 speed tight end. You want to have that speed. You want to have the versatility.
Where did he go to school?
Proud to be a CSU Ram.
Okay.
But, I mean, the point being is having that speed, being a mismatch. And the thing about it, that's where the NFL has gone, right? But he's a good blocker, too. Right. And you don't want to have to tip your hand when you have any of these guys on the field. You want to be like, okay, well, we have to pay attention to all of it. And so I would like those traits. I feel like Eric Tomlinson gives you the opportunity. You have Andrew Beck in there as well. It gives you the opportunity to have a good blockers out there. But you need to have the mismatch guys as well. And that's the direction I'd go.
It is April. It is mock draft season. I know we're going to be seeing the mock drafts on BCT here in the next couple of weeks. But when you look at the Broncos, pick 64 is where they're at right now. Give us a couple names. Guys that you think are praying. Maybe Trey McBride, we just talked about him. Who are you praying that falls to 64, and what do you think the Broncos target in the draft?
Yeah, well, I mean, tight end, if Trey McBride's sitting there 64, it's a no-brainer. I don't think he will be there, but again, if he is there, that's an easy choice for me. I think edge rusher, if you're looking at, say, Josh Pascal out of Kentucky, if he's hanging around over there, Drake Jackson at USC, if you want an edge rusher, that should be in that range. A defensive tackle, if Travis Jones is somehow hanging out of there, or UConn, I'm running up to the podium for that guy. I think he's that kind of talent. You could look at offensive tackle. I think Tyler Smith out of Tulsa is going to be a beast in this league, but he's developmental. Like, he's very, very raw, and some people even think maybe he's a better guard, but I think at 6'5", 300+ pounds, he's an offensive tackle. So I'd probably look at those are positions for the Broncos. You don't really want to be afraid to draft on strength either. You could look at cornerback. Martin Emerson's going to be there from Mississippi State. I'm not a big fan of his necessarily because I think that Emerson He's a little more finesse than I like. I like more of the physical cornerbacks, but those are some options there for you.
Brian Asamoah too, man, the linebacker.
Linebacker at Oklahoma.
Yeah.
He's
like
a heck of a player. But again, you go linebacker again. We're talking about drafting on strength. Okay, well, you brought back Josie Jewell. Is that the developmental for, hey, what do we need there? You have Jonas Griffith here. Have the option at least with my guy from Ohio State last year. Baron Browning. So Baron Browning might get some time at outside linebacker, inside linebacker, that type of thing. But the point is you could draft there and then have a longer-term plan at linebacker.
A lot of different options for the Broncos. Ryan Edwards, thank you for joining us. Obviously, the folks can find you on BCT Weekly on our YouTube, the Broncos YouTube channel. But where can folks find you on the FM dial?
Yeah, you can find us on KOA 850 AM 94.1 FM, weeknights from 6 to 9 p.m. And, of course, also BroncosCountryTonight.com/podcast for the show.
Make sure to check it out. That'll do it for us today on Broncos Weekend. Special thanks to Ryan Edwards and the Hall of Famer Steve Atwater. I'm Matt Boyer. So long, Broncos Country. We will see you next time.